Now we have our All-Star selections coming up to the All-Ireland final, Shane. Obviously, there's been loads of games played. We still have the All-Ireland final to play. You've picked your All-Star 15 pre-All-Ireland final. Are you happy with your team? Can you stand over it?
I'm happy enough with it. I'm pretty torn.
I sense doubt.
I am torn.
Already.
I'm torn. So, I feel compromised with this team. I don't know if I've weighed it up enough. I don't know if I've made some bad decisions here. So, Joe, I'm holding my hands up before.
I'll be quick to tell you, don't worry. I'll tell you straight away when you've made a bad one.
I know you will. Will I start off with the goalie?
Yeah, shout. I somehow I don't think there'll be too much debate here.
Yeah, I'm playing it pretty safe there with Nicky Quaid. Some other lads have done well, and if Stephen O'Keefe has a massive final, and maybe if Nicky Quaid doesn't, keep up his normal standards, maybe Stephen O'Keefe can take it off him. But I think for now, you and I probably both agree. Like, we've released your early All-Stars team as well. We're both kind of going with Nicky Quaid at the moment.
Is Nicky Quaid the only one? Nicky Quaid and O'Keefe, are they the only two in the conversation? Is there anyone else? I'll put it this way: who do you think will be the third All-Star goalie nominee?
That's a fair question. I think Éanna Murphy isn't in the conversation. I think Owen Murphy didn't have his best day against Waterford, so he's probably dropping out of it. Tipperary, Brian Hogan did okay-ish. Cork.
It's not been a vintage year for
No,
keepers.
it
And I think
hasn't.
that's probably why Nicky Quaid is standing probably head and shoulders above at the moment, I'd say.
Yeah, because even you go through the rest of the team, Eibhear Quilligan had some okay moments, but maybe let in a goal or so that he wouldn't be too delighted with. Maybe Alan Nolan had his ups and downs as well. Leash, Enda Rowland, I wasn't blown away by him this year. I thought he was brilliant in the past. And then Mark Fanning as well. It's not like Wexford had a particularly good year. So yeah, it's a fair question. People, get your comments in if you think that there's anyone that we're blackguarding there. We're not doing it on purpose, but let us know. I'll throw up the full back line then. Starting off with Sean Finn. I think most people are going to go with him, aren't they?
I think so. It's like if you want a job done in the full back line, I don't know if there's a better man. And he probably hasn't been at the heights we'd be associated with this year, but he's still been very good, and I think he's getting better, and as games go on, he's getting better too.
Yeah, because he did really good on Desi Hutchinson. My issue often is, does the right type of ball go into Desi Hutchinson to get the most out of him? Because you saw the way he flicked the ball over Sean Finn's head and knocked one into over the bar. He's capable of doing that to anyone. But Finn is very good. I mean, ball went in against Galway, and he was winning them, whether it was Canning, Conor Whelan, whoever it might be on the inside line. He's all things to all men. You could put him marking anybody, I think, and he'd be fairly comfortable. Number 3, Daithí Burke. Even though some of his best work was when he was further out the field, when he was brought out marking Seamus Callanan, and when he went out and swapped with Gerald McInerney against Limerick, I thought he was really good in the half line. But I would say he made that mistake against Seamus Callanan, and slipped for that goal. So there was part of me thinking, I'm not blown away by that performance in some respects. And also, when Richie Hogan went on him, he definitely upset him a little bit. So I was
just a quick one on you there, Shane. Do you think potentially going forward that Shane O'Neill could try and build a team around him, possibly centre back?
I think he'd be crazy not to. I think Gerard McInerney, if you want to stop her back there, Gerard McInerney might be able to do that. Now, he'd probably prefer to be in the half back line, and maybe they'll look at the... I basically think that the half back line next year should contain Fintan Burke and Daithí Burke, 2 left-handers, and you can pick a third after that. You can kind of argue the toss, but I think you can put Fintan Burke or Gerard McInerney fullback, but I'd be more inclined to go with McInerney because he's done all right anytime we've seen him there. I was thinking of Ronan Maher for the full back line, and people think Tipperary bias and all that, but he was brilliant in most games. He was really, really good. I mean, Aaron Gillan, he got a couple of scores off him and kicked that ball into the net after Ronan spilled it. But think of that performance against Cork. He was unbelievable. He cleaned Patrick Horgan out of it. He was excellent also against Galway, even though Conor Whelan gave him some trouble as well. But I think Tipperary going out so early, having 2 losses out of 3, it was hard to argue for him to be in here. And I mean, all the palaver about the red card for Cathal Barrett, outside of that, he was actually very good for Tipperary. He was brilliant in the first day against Limerick when Limerick absolutely cruised to victory. Brilliant against Cork, and he obviously plays on the edge. And look, whether you want to say he got deserved the 2 yellow cards or not, irrespective, he was really good in that game up to that point. But of course, because you get the red card, it's hard to make too much of a case. So
I think he's in your team. I think he's in your team if Tipperary are beaten in 70 minutes and he stays on the pitch. And I think he's probably potentially could be in my team as well. But that has changed their championship. Whether he was rightly or wrongly sent off, that has changed the whole championship for Tipperary. So it's kind of hard to put him in many respects, you know.
And then the other corner back. Now we've seen in your team, and we won't talk about your team. If people want to see it, they can go and have a look at it. But the idea of picking two full backs in the full back line that I see as the lads that mark the actual square itself, I haven't done that. I've tried to pick two lads that in the corners that you think, yeah, I could see him playing cornerback. Yeah, touch of class, put a cornerback and cornerback. So I've gone with Conor Delaney. I think he's had some good performances. The entire Kilkenny team completely fell away when they went from 16 points ahead to Dublin to being level. So you could say, look, there's awful damage being done inside, or you could say there's relentless ball going in, so it's tough on the likes of Delaney. But either way, I thought he's been pretty steady throughout the championship. There were other lads I was looking at, like Rory Hayes. Now Hayes had a lot scored off him, and Desi Hutchinson assisted as well for a bit in that game against Waterford. But I think he's come out with a lot of credit throughout the season. So it was a close one, but I think Conor Delaney, his job on Desi Hutchinson, even though Hutchinson was still quite good, I think he did an awful lot of things where it was kind of above the call of duty throughout the course of the game. So I had to pick him. Fair enough?
No, Conor Delaney was solid in both games. The only thing I'd say is he's particularly solid against Galway and even the last day against Desi. Like, once Burke was picked fullback, you didn't look at any other fullback. You didn't even consider Dan Morrissey. Like, Dan Morrissey would be very comfortable playing a two-man full-back line, and he's been brilliant going into an alien position.
Yeah, no, I do think he was good, but there's been... How much pressure has that Limerick full-back line been under? Galway played within 100 yards of the field. How many balls did they actually put into that full-forward line? They put in a couple of nice crossfield balls in the first half, but he caught one or two nice high balls. But really and truly, the pressure going in there wasn't insane, and I think Sean Finn is more the standout. So you think, like, Conor Delaney's been under far more pressure, and he stood up to it. I think he's just had more to do, so it's on the basis of that.
So the James McGarry Award goes to Dan Morrissey.
Well, it's up to you. Up to you. You're the one making that call. I'll jump onto that.
No, I'm just saying that James McGarry, everyone says the reason why he didn't get an All-Star many years was because he was never tested. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay, half-back line then. Number 5, Calum Lyons. Number 6, Tyg de Burka. Number 7, Kyle Hayes. So it's different to your team, which people will see on the other video, but Calum Lyons has just been brilliant. 1-2 against Cork the first day. I thought he had a very good Munster final, keeping Gerald Hegarty pretty quiet, and hopefully they'll reprise that battle in the All-Ireland final. And then brilliant against Kilkenny. And also, people will say Tony Kelly was injured, but he did keep Tony Kelly pretty quiet in the sense that Kelly had lit up the championship with 145 in 3 games. He got 2 points from play. He was injured, we know that. But Calum Lyons did his job, so you can't complain with his contribution there. And then he was very good against Kilkenny. Yes, he fell asleep for TJ Reid's goal. Got the wrong side of the break, and you've played in the defence in the backs most of your life, as have I. That can happen to you sometimes, and you'll be kicking yourself when it does happen. But it did happen, so that's a black mark against him. But he was brilliant driving forward. He was brilliant going back, winning dirty ball, winning frees. Caught a beauty of a ball over TJ Reid in the second half when I was watching it back. It was just class ball. Tyg de Burka, I think, don't really need to even go into too much detail. He's just been sensational. And the other team sets up to try and not get the ball anywhere near him, to try and bypass him. But he's so good that he ends up, and that's also a testament to what's happening further up the field in that Waterford outfit. But he's been brilliant, and Kyle Hayes outside him. Now, I did look at the idea of putting Diarmaid Byrnes in there, and it was kind of a toss of a coin for me, but I just think that Hayes' ability to drive forward, like he catch a ball, fine, so can Diarmaid Byrnes, but he can run 80 or 90 yards with it and put you on the back foot, and like he nearly got up for that goal against Galway. So I just think he's been really, really good and adjusted so easily from being the half forward line, so that's why I went with him there. A couple of
things, Shane, as well. A lot of things change in hurling, but the importance of the half back line never changes, really, does it? That's fundamentally never changed in hurling. You're looking at 2 Waterford guys and 1 Limerick guy. You're looking at the 6 lads overall, and 2 really, really strong half back units. If you look at Tipperary last year, all the matters ended up with all-stars, and they were out in the half back line a lot of the time. If your half back line is playing well and dominating, you have a great chance of winning games. The only thing I'll take it to task on is Kyle Hayes obviously played centre forward in the first game, was very, very quiet then against Tipperary at half back for long stages. And I'm not having a go here or anything like that, but I think his work is an awful lot flashier than Dermot Burns, and he gets balls and he surges forward. Has much apart from the couple of frees that he's won, has much come off those kind of surging runs that everyone remembers. He's hit 4 or 5 wides over the last couple of games. I just think Dermot Burns is far more consistent, particularly with his shot taking. Although Hayes is doing something that probably Burns can't do by taking on a defence like that, I just think it's a bit flashier than what Burns does. I think consistently Burns has done it throughout their 4 games.
Yeah, before I kind of sort of split hairs on this one, we're not criticising either player. We think they're both in the running. So when I say I'll go with Kyle Hayes ahead of him, like you might say too much isn't coming off those runs. But if you're Davy Burke and you have to run 70 yards after this lad, or you're Joe Canning and you're trying to run after this lad, it's wearing teams out. He's covering ground. I think Dermot Burns is giving away more frees. And I know you're saying maybe flashier stuff from Kyle Hayes, but like sometimes Dermot Burns is standing there on his own and like he can drive it over from 100 yards and he's just standing there on his own driving points over from distance. Sometimes they're brilliant points and it's not like that. But I just think what Hayes does in driving the team the other way is killing the opposition. So that's why I've gone with him. But I accept that other people might go with Dermot Burns.
And just on that as well, it's such a luxury. You don't want 2 half-backs that do the same thing. So they have, if just say Hayes plays 7 and whoever is on him, whatever, and they're keeping into him or whatever, then Hayes goes over the other side and Burns goes over the far side. All of a sudden, the half forward has a threat that can score from 100 yards, and the other half forward now has a guy that's running at him. So they don't have 2 half backs doing the exact same thing, which is huge, I think. Yeah. And just on that, I'd love to have either of them in my team, gladly. I'm not having a go at either of them at all. I'd love to have either of them in my team.
Yeah, the midfield I think was easy enough to pick. Jamie Barron number 8, Will O'Donoghue number 9. They've both been really good. So I mean, Jamie Barron, as I said in your video, he's just fun to watch, and there's end product. Sometimes it goes wrong on him. A couple of times he did against Kilkenny, even when he tried that backhand pass over the sideline, and another time he threw the ball after running endlessly with it. But it's just, he's like a micro machine going around. I don't know if anyone remembers that video game from the early 90s, micro machines, these tiny little dinkies going around the breakfast table. He's just able to change direction so quickly. He's brilliant to watch. And Will O'Donoghue is he's the enforcer of hurling now. He wasn't brilliant against Galway, but there was actually a lack of midfield options here. You could have put Cian Lynch in, and in the heel of the hunt he's probably played as well as Will O'Donoghue, but he's been in half-hour line a nice bit, and I just didn't find a place for him. I think if Alan Flynn had to play another game or two at midfield the way he played against Galway, I think he'd be in here, because I thought he was absolutely brilliant that game. And you could probably say the same for Michael Breen with the 5 points against Cork. But you need to be doing it in I think a bit more consistently to be in this selection. So that's my midfield. I'll move on then to the you're obviously not going to argue with that, so I'll just
I'm happy enough with that. Yeah. Probably him, that and Nicky Quaid is probably the only kind of line of the field that I'll actually agree with John.
Yeah, well, I've gone with Gerald Hegarty at number 10. Hard to argue with that. Interesting to see how many people focus on the rough nature of some of his tackling, and I mean that mostly as a positive, but sometimes it goes a little bit over the line. And I think he could be a little bit of a marked man going into the final, whether he feels that it's fair or unfair. He does give away a lot of fouls, so I think people are going to be keeping an eye out for it. At centre forward, I've gone with TJ Reid. I think he was very, very quiet in that Leinster final, but the fact that he got a goal kind of papers over the cracks of what was an otherwise very quiet performance. He was brilliant against Waterford. Now, he missed a couple of chances, which, some of them are long-range frees, you can accept that. And he went quiet for an awful lot of the second half. But in the heel of the hunt, he was really good. He was obviously very good in the first half against Dublin in the Leinster semi-final until the swap with Owen O'Donnell happened, and then he went quiet. So I have him in there because, when he's been good in this championship, he's been really, really good. But I do think it should be... There's an element with some players that you almost have to pick them before the thing starts, and you almost feel under pressure to pick him here. I didn't put him in my team of the week after the All-Ireland semi-finals, but I think he's done enough in his good moments. And is this a kind of a symptom of when you're hitting 33 that it's harder to be a 70-minute man in every game, but such is his class, he's nearly always going to do something in every game?
Yeah, like the other lad you have in the half-hour line is Stephen Bennett. Like TJ Reid couldn't do what Stephen Bennett is doing over 70 minutes, or do what Tom Morrissey or Gerald Hegarty doing over 70 minutes. Just probably not possible when you get to that age. But I think he's very, very smart as well. He does what he can, and he does it really, really well. And I think it's like anything in life. The hurler or the person in life I respect most, the person who knows their limitations in some respects, and absolutely accentuates the positives and blows them through the roof. The only thing I'd say about TJ is, do you think TJ is in any way vulnerable? Is his All-Star vulnerable going into the All-Ireland final potentially?
I'd say so. Yeah, I do think so. I think so. We'll have to see. I mean, it's all down to the All-Ireland final performances, because like I've left Jack Fagan out of here, and you could make a fair case that, you know, he's been scoring in most of the games, got a goal against Clare, got a just like was instrumental for Waterford in that comeback against Kilkenny. So maybe he has another big game. All of a sudden, maybe he's in the conversation. Gerald Hegarty looks fairly nailed on. Tom Morrissey come into the conversation. Stephen Bennett looks fairly nailed on. And yeah, it's a tough one. Like those other lads that I looked at, I mean, if Robbie O'Flynn hadn't been suspended for the first game, maybe he would have done enough against Waterford to make the game go closer and do a bit more to get himself in here. He was quiet-ish against Tip, did a couple of good things. Brilliant against Dublin. I think Cathal Malone. Now this is the flip side, right? So TJ Reid is nearly in before you start, but a lot of that is rightly so, because he's obviously so brilliant and he does so many good things. But our standards are so high for him at the same time. Whereas Cathal Malone, you'd never expect a player like that to be in the All Stars, and not because he can't hurl, but because he's not sort of stylish or flashy in any way, shape or form. Like he scored 4 points against, was it Watford or Wexford? I can't remember off the top of my head, but one of them. And he was contributing in all their games, got a few against Laois as well. Yet you'd almost never expect someone like Cathal Malone to be in there, and that's kind of wrong in a way.
Yeah, no, 100%. Cathal Malone had, was 8.5 out of 10 in probably their 3 or 4 championship games this year. He was absolutely brilliant, but I hope it's not the same thing that happened Jack Brown in 2018 when he didn't even get a nomination, despite, like, I thought Jack Brown was nearly an All-Star in 18. Cathal Malone's not far off All-Star this year. He's in the top 20, 25, I'd say. And I just hope everyone has their eyes open and make sure he's in that 45.
Yeah, a big one here now. And again, this is actually the exact same as the Cathal Malone one here. I think John Donnelly has been brilliant this season for Kilkenny.
Oh, outstanding.
Like, he scored a couple of points. Let me just look at the match programme here. Yeah, so he scored.
Shane, just a quick one while you're looking through the match programme there. The problem is he's going to come into the most congested division probably on the pitch. Yeah, really, because a lot of the top forwards are going to be in that half-hour line, and you've left out Tom Morrissey. Potentially, you've left out Jack Fagan, Cathal Malone. There could be a couple of guys from the All-Ireland final as well too. That's why he's definitely in the conversation. That's why he's not in the 15.
But because he's not seen as the flashy player, and he doesn't have the catalogue of brilliant moments behind him, the YouTube hurling will say, if we can put it that way, and that's not an insulting way. Like, he scored 2 points the other night. He catches ball. He won about 6, or he was responsible for about 6 scoreable or scored chances throughout that game. I thought he was really good against Galway. I thought he was good at moments against Dublin as well. But again, he's probably just not flashy enough for enough people to see how well he's done. But anyway, he hasn't made it, and I think Dan McCormick is another guy. Still don't understand why he wasn't started against Limerick, and he was brilliant in Tipperary's other 2 games. He's worth mentioning, as is Aaron Dunphy, who I thought was very good for Laois at certain moments this year, and it's worth mentioning his name. I'll jump onto the full forward line. I've started off with Tony Kelly at number 13. You could make a case for him to play any of those 6 forward positions, bar number 14, but he wore number 9 at times, but he obviously wasn't playing at midfield. What are you shaking?
You're a gas man. You're an absolute gas man. You tried to pull holes at my team for me picking Tony Kelly corner forward, and you picked him corner forward yourself.
No, but the thing was that all 3 of your full forward line, you could argue, didn't really play in there. The other ones, as you will see, Austin Gleason wearing number 14 and Brian Kincannon wearing number 15 do play in there.
Sorry, Austin Gleason, has done his best hurling out the pitch this year. Austin Gleason, who scored 4 points from in the half-hour line the other night.
You have a fair bit to say for yourself here. No, I think Austin Gleason's been very good. He's been averaging 3 or 4 points a game.
Hey, whoa. I'm not saying he hasn't played well. I'm not saying that. But you tried to pick holes in my team by saying...
Sure, isn't that the name of the game?
He has not been playing. All his best hurling has been done in the half-hour line. And if you look at all his scores have been in or around between the 45 and the 65. He hasn't been playing at the edge of the square. So anybody who watches that first video,
he has played in there nicely.
Anyone who watches that first video just needs to realise the absolute balderdash you're talking about. You're making a nonsensical argument.
And at the flip side, you've actually picked Stephen Bennett in the full forward line, and I'd argue he's done more of his good stuff out the field. So, you know, that's who I've gone with anyway. I think he's been really good, and even when he has been inside, even if the scores haven't happened in there, like if you watch back the games, he's bullying defenders in there and turning them backwards. But anyway, we won't argue the toss on that one too much more. But Brian Kincannon, again, he spent some of his games out the field, and he's been inside at times as well. He's been brilliant. He scored a lovely goal against Tipperary. He scored, he scored 3 points against Limerick, and in some respects kept Galway in that game. He was so good throughout the entirety of it. So we both had 8 first-time All-Stars. If we were handing out the All-Stars, it'd be first-time All-Stars on for 8 lads in both, which is interesting enough because there tends to be that kind of thing where the same old type of guys tend to get it.
Yeah, no, usually it's a lot of the same faces, and to be honest with you, it's probably a lot of the bigger names that end up getting it. Just interesting, if Cathal Mannion had stayed on the field against Limerick, he would have been in with a shout somewhere probably in the forward line, I would say, maybe out around the half forward line. I'm just going to fire through your team really quickly, right? And I just want you to say, of these, who's guaranteed an All-Star? Who do you think is guaranteed an All-Star before the final? Nicky Quaid?
No.
You think Stephen O'Keefe could overtake him?
I think he could potentially, yeah. It just depends on how the final goes. I think that one kind of, yeah, I think people will be swayed by the final big time.
Sean Finn?
No, because, I mean, anyone who has a disaster in the final, they could lose their All-Star. But I think he's done enough, and form lines suggest he will do enough.
Okay, Dahi Burke?
No,
Dan Morrissey has a game, you see. Has a chance now. He's a chance to overtake him.
I think Conor Prunty has too much to do to get one. If Conor Prunty is man of the match, and you mentioned it in the other video how he had been, you could trace 5 goals from the last couple of games to him that Waterford have conceded. But if he has a monstrous final, and let's say he snaps a load of ball over Aaron Gillan, who hasn't even been mentioned in either of our videos, and probably it hasn't been as good a season for him, but Prunty has to have a monster of a game to get in here. So I think it's only really Dan Morrissey that can break in here.
Conor Delaney is vulnerable going into the final, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like if Barry Nash has has a massive game, or if Shane McNulty, Ian Kenny only just came into the team for the last couple of games, and maybe even Shane Fives will return for the final. Remains to be seen. But if Shane McNulty has an unbelievable game and keeps, whether it's Graham Mulcahy, Peter Casey, Seamus Flanagan, whoever, like if he has an unbelievable game, you never know.
Callum Lyons?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for him to not win an All-Star at this stage. Yeah, I think so.
Tyke de Burke, I'd say the same, would you?
I'd say you can start inscribing his name, yeah.
Kyle Hayes?
No, not guaranteed, because I think Tyke de Burke is going to get it anyway. And then I think they're going to split it between one Waterford, which will be Lyons, and then one Limerick, which will be either Hayes or Burns, whoever has the better final.
If Barron and O'Donoghue are solid at midfield, you could probably put that down as the All-Star pairing.
You can start scraping their names in, I think.
Gerald Hegarty is not going to lose an All-Star at this stage.
Unless he absolutely blows up in the final, which I think is so unlikely. But unless that happens, and like he would have had a very quiet All-Ireland semi-final last year against Limerick, but I think he's fairly much on course here, yeah.
Yeah, you've talked about TJ being a bit vulnerable. Stephen Bennett's nailed in, I'd say, isn't he?
Yeah, but I think he needs to be better on the freeze the next day, because if he has a bad final on the freeze, you never know. And if Tom Morrissey steps up and has a massive game, or if let's say Keane Lynch takes over, then maybe Bennett or Reid might lose out.
I'm not even going to ask you about Tony Kelly. I got Brian Kincannon.
I think Graham Mulcahy has a lot to do after his semi-final, and I don't know if he blew me away in the Munster Championship either. Who are the other options? Like Aaron Gillan has been so quiet that I don't think it matters what sort of a final he has. Peter Casey, if he starts and goes really well, I think he's been good all the time. When he started against Waterford last day, when he came on in the Munster final when he came on the last day against Galway. I think he actually might be a million miles away, and I think Flanagan probably won't at this stage. And then Desi Hutchinson, you score me a hat-trick and you're getting one. Or if you score a couple of goals or whatever. Or Ozzy Gleason, who we know is stuck to the square at all times. Maybe maybe he will. But do you know what? Jack Prendergast hasn't been mentioned, and he actually should be because he's been good. As has the likes of Aaron Shanahan. Seamus Callan has been very good, and people aren't talking about it. And Conor Whelan, of course, has been very good as well.
Some of those guys are victims of their standards. Callan's victim of his standards, really, isn't he? Because everyone expects him to get a goal in every game now, basically. Just on Gleason, for Gleason to get an All-Star, this is going to have to be a murder try at Ireland final, and if Waterford were to win it, he's probably, I'd say, nearly assured an All-Star, because you'd have to see him having a big game for Waterford to win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, and like you said, like we saw last year that Colin Fennelly played in the full forward line basically the entire year, and he was picked at number 12. And we saw Brian Howard picked at centre back for Dublin. So we know that this could all be rejigged. You could end up with someone, Desi Hutchinson, with a hat-trick in the full forward line. You could end up with Gleason scoring 5 points, end up in the half forward line. The whole thing could be rejigged, but I think that's they're not bad teams now. That's not like people can go and look at Verney's team, but mine is that's tasty enough now.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see now. We'll obviously do our All-Star 15 after the All-Ireland final just before Christmas, but it'll be interesting to see how similar they are. I'll have a fiver with you that my team has more guys in it than yours, and then my team will have more in it than the ultimate All-Star selection picked by the committee as well. But no, that's the job, Shane. Thanks a million.